Hello, my name is Igor Krupnik. I'm curator of art and technology at the Department of Anthropology at this museum, and I have been here since 1991. And when I came here, this magnificent series, which is called The Handbook of North American Indians, and many of you may be well familiar with it, was in full production, except that I'll be talking about the one which is with a question mark, which is its opening volume 1. So what is the handbook? And the list of the published volumes are here, and number 1 is introduction. So it's 15 published volumes that are in more than 3,000 world libraries, very well received, reviewed in many high-class anthropology journals. It's voluminous materials associated with the handbook production, maps and illustrations and references. It's an incredible archives, which is stored now at the NAA in Suitland. It's an oral history of the handbook, which is an enormous source of information. And according to everybody who was involved and who was here in that era, it was the largest enterprise by the Smithsonian Anthropology during the entire second half of the past century. Very briefly, the history, it started in 65-66. The late Dr. William Sturtevant became the lead editor in 1966. Preparation started in 71. The handbook office was established in 72. And on you go, the first volumes published in 78. In 2007, the office was closed. The last volume was published in 2008. The production was discontinued. And then in 2014, we decided to restart the series. Here is the group, people who are working on this new venture. You can see it's both inside the Smithsonian, mostly the NMNH, but also our colleagues at NMAI, and also some external people. And we view this venture as a unique chance to update the series almost 20, 30 to 40 years since the first volumes have been produced, and also an opportunity to move it into the 21st century, to make it like forward-looking rather than a history of Native American research in the 19th and 20th century. So this volume, which we plan to publish in 2017, will be of 36 to 38 chapters. Chapters are coming, mostly as a flood of chapters. We have 25 plus chapters already in. 3 major sections in the volume. The intellectual history of the handbook. For the first time, we'll be telling the story of the handbook in full. Then there'll be a review of what happened in 10 regional areas, in 10 regional volumes of the handbook. And the most important part 3 and the largest is the emerging themes, the new themes in Native American research. And I don't have time to talk about all of them or any of them at length, but just a list of those: climate change, food sovereignty, new immigrants from non-North American indigenous communities living in the United States and Canada, native languages in the next millennium. This is a poster that we presented at the recent conference of Association of Tribal Libraries, Archives, and Museums here in Washington, D.C. back 2 months ago. And one of the most intriguing sections of the volume, called New Cultural Domains, that talks about things that didn't exist at the time when the first handbook was produced, such as digital networks, online access, social media, new digital tools to use for the support of Indian cultures and languages. So what would be the main outcomes of this venture when we complete it? First of all, we produce volume 1, which will be the opening of the series, so there won't be that very kind of humiliating dent at the beginning of the series, which is now volume 1. As I said, we will transform the handbook, at least help transform the handbook, into a forward-looking venture by covering the issues that are important in the 21st century. The volume will dramatically increase the voice of Native American contributors in framing topics of relevance to Native communities. It also will be published as e-book. None of the handbook volumes were put online, and this one will be. And this may be a critical step in eventual digitizing the entire series. And that will be a new level of involvement of the museum staff and of our partners at NMAI and other ventures. And here is the constellation of my colleagues at this museum who may answer some of your questions about their work for the handbook. Thank you. There are many plans to scan the rest of the volumes, but the problem is copyrights for the images. They were given back 30, 40 years ago as one time because there was no way to do at that time. So it would be an enormous work to go over many thousand illustrations and get the permissions from the museums and collections to reprint them. Yep. Well, we did not fully yet get the money. So we have money for the preparation of the layout, or actually for the preparation of the manuscript. Smithsonian Institution Scholarly Press very kind of generously agreed to publish it, but I think there'll be many money issues between the production of the manuscript and the appearance of the published volumes. Thank you, Martha, for the question.
You have such a long perspective on the handbook now. What do you think the most surprising new insights are from, in your putting together a volume 1 that will be surprising to the readers as well?
Well, this is, in a way, my childhood, kind of a flock of my children, so chapters in the book. So it's hard to kind of prioritize any of them. But I still believe that there are 2 lines in the story that are, from my perspective, utmost importance. One is, which I already described, this is the forward-looking chapters, the kind of topics, the themes of the 21st century, which are enormous and never covered in the previous volume and are very rarely covered as a complex theme in any of the books. And another theme is the intellectual history of the handbook. This one was also never produced, and when we started this study, includes a lot of archival work, we realized how important handbook was back then in the late 1960s and early 1970s for the growing of the institution under Secretary Ripley. There were many players involved that have been mostly forgotten. The whole history of transformation of the institution into a more narrowly focused research center and serving general public, relying or responding to challenges of the 60s. Enormous social, societal challenges of the 60s, and handbook was one of them. And we never actually kind of addressed the handbook as a product of social realities of the 1960s. We always thought of it as a series of magnificent gray books on the shelves, but that was something that was produced under a particular societal development response to American Indian movement, to all the clashes, social and political, in the country at that very time, and they responded the way they could, and that's the story we want to tell.